So we're here tonight for a regular school board meeting, just at 6:30 PM. I'll call the meeting to order. And first we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first looking for a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any changes to or additions to the agenda? Hearing nothing, all those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Next, looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the August 28th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, corrections on those minutes?
I was just wondering if we should, include what's being said in the chat in the minutes so that other people, because it is a public meeting and they are making comments. So I just wondered if those chats online should be included in the minutes.
Question.
Yeah, I guess I can inquire about that. I don't really see much harm in doing that. Let me just run it by the attorneys first, and then we can include or omit those chat comments.
I mean, they know that they're being recorded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, some people had difficulty with audio, right? So they had to type it in.
So I just figured it might be beneficial.
Okay. All right, so noted. Thanks, Becca. Any other questions, corrections? All right, hearing nothing further, all those in favor of approving the minutes from August 28th, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? All right, public comment. We'll start with our in-person audience. If you're a member of the public, you got a comment, just introduce yourself and which town you reside in, please.
Yes, hello, my name's Daniel Munger. I live in Benson.
Thank you.
I'm just here to support Mr. Curtis' hire. I think it's all part of the current trend to attack anybody that dares that critical and ask tough questions. I applaud you, sir. I wish we had more of you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay, yes.
Roseanne Van Loo. I'm not saying I agree with what Kurt did. I'm not saying I disagree. But I do think that a concern was brought to him as a member of the board. Obviously, the board as a whole did not address the issue to the satisfaction of the person who brought the concern. And I think that Kurt was doing his job, the job that we people in Fairhaven elected him to do. I think he was doing it. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other public comments here in person? All right, is there anyone attending online who has a public comment? Okay, moving on to correspondence. I've received none.
No.
Okay. Central office report was included in the packet as an attachment. Do any board members have questions for the administrative team on its contents? Yes, Kurt?
Yeah, so Chris called our attention to the definitions for restraint and seclusion. And basically, you've got a regulation. And then you've got an agency memo clarifying the regulation. The memo takes precedence. Guidelines regarding seclusion in Vermont schools revised September 3rd, 2019 is such a memo. There are frequently asked questions at the bottom. The fourth one states, if the student has any reason to believe he or she would not be permitted to leave at will, it is still considered seclusion. And it doesn't have to be true. It's if the student thinks it. If the student thinks that he or she will be returned, if the student thinks he or she will be punished in any way, it's seclusion. And I'm guessing that there were incidents of seclusion that were not considered as such. Perhaps there needs to be more training from the top down.
Is that a question? Are you asking for a response from Chris, or Chris, do you want to address that now or in the?
She's welcome to respond, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure, and I can share with the board. I think that Mr. Heyer has an inaccurate description of the rule, and I actually solicited from the Agency of Education today clarification with regard to that exact reference that you made. And I can pull up the email. I believe I have a copy of it here in my materials. But they indicated that there are two things that are absolutely necessary in order for it to be seclusion. And the student has to be alone in the room. And, regrettably, the information that you've been putting out is not what the agency has articulated their understanding to be. So if you just give me a moment to find that, or I can print it out. Thank you. So I asked specifically to respond to a statement that was made with regard to it was based completely on a student's perception, and that it didn't matter if the student was alone in the room or not. And so I asked the AOE, is that accurate, that it meets the definition of the seclusion if a person is in the room with an adult or with another person? And they said, I'm getting back to you regarding your request for clarification on the definition of seclusion. You are absolutely correct, Chris. A seclusion is defined by two things, which both need to be in place. Number one, the child is alone in a space. And number two, the child is not permitted or does not perceive that they will be allowed to leave at will. If the child is not alone in a space, it is not seclusion. It is often the case that adults may accompany a child into a seclusion area to co-regulate with the child. That is considered a best practice in terms of a student who's escalated and not yet ready to process or discuss what has transpired. The adult in that room with the child can prohibit the child from leaving, and it still would not be considered a seclusion because the child is not alone in that space. I hope this helps you to clarify information about seclusions with others with whom you interact. As always, feel free to contact me at any time if you have any further questions or concerns. That same understanding was corroborated with the regional special ed administrators on Friday. That same understanding is what was corroborated with the Vermont Council of Special Education Administrators and their president and the executive director as well. That is the understanding under which the district is operating, and it is in accordance with state law under Rule 4500, which I would be glad to speak in more detail about during my presentation further in the agenda.
Kurt, put the phone away.
No, I'm reading from this, if you don't mind.
I mean,
This is, instead of carrying documents, I'm reading from the phone.
go ahead.
The question was the fourth question down from that
Correct.
memo.
Yep.
I've been told that as long as I keep the door to our seclusion room ajar, it is not considered seclusion. This is correct. Not necessarily. If you position yourself in a way that blocks the doorway, or if the student has any reason to believe he or she would not be permitted to leave at will, it is considered seclusion.
If they're alone. If you are blocking the doorway, you are standing in the doorway or inside the room, it is not seclusion. If you go outside the doorway, you stand outside of the door with your foot in the door and your hands blocking, shutting it closed, and you are outside of the room, student is inside of the room, that is seclusion. If I am standing in a doorway and there are student or students on the other side, it is not seclusion, I am present in the room with them. Otherwise, what you're describing would be every second grade teacher who tells the students to sit back down in their seats and she's standing in the doorway that says, you're not going out to recess, boys and girls, until all the garbage on the floor is picked up and your chairs are nicely put on your tables, would meet that definition of seclusion. Anytime a student is in in-school suspension or an administrator calls them into the office and asks them to cool down for a minute while I look into this, and you're not going to go back to gym for the rest of the period. And they sit in there with them while the student cools down. That is not seclusion. Even if they were to step out of their office to take a phone call and come back in after a moment, that is not seclusion. That does not meet the definition of seclusion. We do have staff that are well-trained. We are continually retraining. There's a state training coming up again on the 27th, 28th of this month. I go around and train with our staff in the building. Every person in the school district has to participate in Rule 4500 training, and I can get more into detail about what that consists of again during my presentation. We are operating under the rules of the state. We are rule followers.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on. Does anyone else have any questions for the administrators for contents contained in the central office report? Yes, Christina?
Under the Director of Operations report, there was something about ticketing delays due to public information requests. What would those public information requests be?
So the one we're currently working on is requests for 30,000 emails from a former employee.
Oh,
30,000 emails, which is taking over 7 boxes of paper to produce.
At least 9 hours a box to redact, so.
okay.
That's what we've been.
That's what I assumed, but just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to finance. There was a finance committee meeting beforehand. I'll hand it over to the chair of that committee, Glenn.
Good evening. So yes, as Tim stated, the Finance Committee met tonight. We started out discussing the budget surplus from the fiscal year that just ended. And at our last meeting, it was looking like we were somewheres in the vicinity of a $940,000 surplus. As some bills have come in, right now we're looking at a forecasted balance of $916,667. That could shrink a little bit if some other bills show up from last year that have not been submitted yet. So I think, it's probably fairly safe to say we're going to be somewhere in the vicinity of 900,000 for a surplus for this year. And then from there, we got into a discussion of the balance of the upcoming budget, fiscal year 25. Kind of a timeline with dates as to everything that goes into getting us a first draft of the budget. And those things will start, in the very soon, with meetings with within each individual building, looking at what is needed and everything. We ended with a discussion, and it's in your part of your central office report from Cheryl, our finance director, the long-awaited regulations and the changes in the weighting of students is going into effect for our next budget. Kind of a rough estimate in the calculations, because of our sparsely populated areas and how they've changed the weightings of students, it's going to increase our equalized pupil count by about 26 students. And that will mean that with the funding from the state, it will increase we can spend an additional $440,000 without affecting the tax rate. Now, part of but everything that went into this the changing of the weighting formula is that that money is supposed to go toward supporting the students that need it. So, as we start to work our way through all of these funding formulas, some things with the whole determination of equalized pupils is going to stay the same. It'll be a 2-year average as it has been. But one of the things is that now, instead of them counting the number of people who come through the door on just one day, they look at the number of students who come through the door over a 20-day period in October and then average that. So that alone can adjust your equalized pupil count.
But we lose our small schools grant.
Yes, we are losing our small schools grants because of this. And so that will have $100,000 effect to the negative for us. So that 440,000 is actually, $340,000. So, but more to come there. And then lastly, we got some bills to pay. So I would like to make a motion to approve payments in the amount of $863,525.55.
Second. Any questions? Hearing nothing, all those in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'd like to make a motion to approve payments out of the Capital Reserve Fund in the amount of $32,415.49.
Second. Any questions? Capital Reserve? Hearing nothing, all those in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to approve food service bills in the amount of $12,371.17.
Second. Any questions on food service? Hearing nothing, all those in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to approve grant funds in the amount of $27,458.11.
Second. Any questions on grants? Hearing nothing, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion to approve high school student activity expenses in the amount of $1,587.50.
Second. Questions on high school student activity? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And lastly, I'd like to make a motion to approve elementary student activity expenses in the amount of $3,192.81.
Second. Any questions? Elementary student activity? Hearing nothing, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we've paid some bills. We've talked about the change in expected surplus, budget timeline. Any other questions, Finance Committee related? For Cheryl or Glenn? I'm sorry, this is for board only. There's a public comment section at the end, so if you have a question, then I would. Okay, thank you, Glenn and Finance Committee. All right, so next we've got number 8, which is teacher supervision evaluation pilots. Is there a presentation to bring
Yes.
up on screen?
Yes, there is. And we have Jackie Wilson here with us tonight. Jackie's the consultant that we've been working with over the last year or so on this. if you were back on the board years ago, if you go back to when the school or the high school was a school in need of improvement designated by the federal government, during that time period, we needed to develop a new supervision evaluation plan as part of that school improvement grant. And so we worked closely with the union back then. I wasn't here that whole time, but part of that time, as the director of curriculum, we put a new teacher evaluation plan in place. And then this past year or two, we've been working with the union to revamp that plan and have it specifically focus on teacher professional growth. And we did that in collaboration with the union, with teachers, with administrators. Jackie helped move us through that process. We've been doing a lot of work with the University of Washington on educational leadership and the 5 dimensions of teaching an instructional framework. This year, we're piloting that in all of our schools. Our principals are piloting that with just a couple of teachers in each of their buildings, going through the process, and Jackie's going to talk a little bit about that in a second. And then next year, we would reconvene the committee, go through, what were the pluses, what were the minuses, what are some things we need to tweak before we put it out for full adoption the following year. So this year, we're kind of living in 2 supervision, teacher supervision evaluation models, and then the hope would be then to revamp the administrator one afterwards, focused on educator and administrator growth. So Jackie, oh, there you are.
Transformed herself.
I snuck into KCC.
All right.
So thanks for having me this evening. My name is Jackie Wilson, and I retired as a superintendent from Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union in 2020. It was wonderful timing. So I had 5 months of COVID to deal with, but so I didn't retire because of that. That was planned. So I've been working since last January. I started working with a group of teachers. Josh, I saw Josh walk in there. Josh was part of the team, and with some administrators and Brooke and Casey. And we were really looking at your current, the teacher evaluation plan that you had, and how do we revamp that to align with the new instructional model that the leadership has been working on from the University of Washington. So that the University of Washington model is really very research-based. Just like in any profession, you should always be tuning into what's the current research say on what is best for kids in their learning. How do we grow our learners? Because that's why we're here. And so we adopted this, I say we, I did too in my district, and I know a lot of districts in the state of Vermont are adopting that University of Washington model. And it looks at what are the practices that research shows that really work to leverage learning for our kids. Because we should all understand what those are, and we should all be implementing them in our classrooms so we can really see our kids moving, and how do we measure that. So it's a big, a pretty significant learning curve for the principals, and now they'll start to work with the teachers on that. This model also pays great attention to the fact that kind of the most important people that are going to leverage this work are the principals in your buildings. They are the instructional leaders. And so let's do whatever we can to do to support them growing their instructional leadership so they can support their teachers, because that's what it's all about. So I started off working with that mix of, there were on the original committee when we revamped the plan, there were a few principals. But by the spring, my last meeting was I met with all of the principals. So now I'll start to work for this next half of the year with the principals and help support their leadership. So Walter, if you could just go, yeah. So I've already talked to you all about that, so I don't need to go there with that. I think so we can go to, Walter, if we do like what, key components. What are the key components of that new plan? And if you could do the next slide, great. So Centers for Educational Leadership, that just means what I talked about, the University of Washington. So this is their instructional model. There are 5 areas of learning that we're focusing on with kids. Purpose is the purpose of the instruction clear, student engagement, curriculum and pedagogy, assessment for student learning, and classroom environment and culture. Now that's a lot to understand, and I know that Casey has copies. If you as board members want to take a look at those 5 dimensions and see what that's all about, he has copies for you. So you can take a look at that. But you'll see when you look at it, it's a lot at once. So, so we decided what are we going to focus on first? And so the leadership decided they're first going to focus on that student engagement and curriculum, the classroom environment and culture. Those are the 2 areas of primary focus. And they may find that those are going to be the 2 areas for 2 years, 3 years that you're really going to tune into. Because everybody wants to understand, what does good student engagement look like? And how are we measuring it? And how can we give feedback about it? So those will be the areas that this district will work on for the first couple of years. The next slide, please, Walter. So the framework, I already mentioned this, focuses on teacher and leader growth. We really strive to utilize a common language. We are going to work together to analyze. So if we've got our leaders out there, they're doing walkthroughs and observations in classrooms, we're going to get together and share, like, what do we see? So if we say that student engagement means that there's good student talk about content, what does that mean? And we'll share and have conversations about, this is what I saw, this is what I think it is, and so that we can all start to grow our understandings around what those things mean. So the principals will work and meet throughout the year and have those conversations about that. And because really, at the end of the day, we're really trying to help our student leaders get to the place where they can really guide as teachers. That's the overarching goal. So this is a growth model. They're growing as leaders, teachers are growing as teachers, and with the end result being, we want to see that growth for our kids. Next one, please, Walter. So there's two parts of this plan. And I do think it was shared with you. Everybody got a copy of the new plan, yeah. So again, a lot to look at, but if you were digging through that, there's 2 parts of it. There's growth and evaluation cycles. So all teachers all teachers in a school participate in the growth process. That means in the fall, they do a self-assessment, and they will use that framework, the 5 dimensions, to self-assess. Where am I on that? Where am I as a leader? Where do I think I am? They're going to then determine a focus area, and they'll develop a growth plan, a plan to move forward. Now, for most, I won't say for all, in most instances, most of the teachers are going to be picking from that student engagement or that classroom environment, because those are the areas of focus for now. So they develop a growth plan, and then at the end of the year, and when they develop that growth plan, they do meet. So in the fall, they meet with their principal or their direct supervisor, if it doesn't happen to be a principal. They share the growth plan, they talk about it, And then that goes into effect for the year. And then at the end of the school year, they have an end-of-year conference. The teacher comes, brings in, this is the growth that I saw, here's the evidence, here's how I monitored that. And they have a conversation with the principal. And then the principal will, then they sign off on that, and there's a record of that. That goes in the personnel file. So that's how that works. So that's for all teachers. Then you have level 1 teachers. So level 1 teachers, those are the ones where it's most intensive, that you are getting the most support from your principal in that year. So that's all newly appointed teachers. It's a change of endorsement. If you happen to be a third grade teacher, and then you got your middle school license in mathematics, and now you're the middle school math teacher, you're also considered a level 1 teacher, because you're in a very new area of expertise. So you're going to be a level 1. And then all experienced teachers will go on to level 1 every 3 years. So everybody cycles through that. So they will go into that more intensive cycle, because a level 1 cycle is more intensive and gets more intensive support from the principal. So that's how that works. So, and if you're a level 1 teacher, you are going to what we call 2 inquiry cycles with targeted feedback. So that means that you've met with your principal, you've looked at, you have referred to your growth plan. You've said, here are the areas that I feel I need to grow. In the instance of new teachers, that principal's dropped in a few times before they've even met. So they kind of see what's going on in that classroom so that they can contribute to the conversation. Because in some cases, for a brand new teacher, even though we say it's engagement, there may be classroom environment stuff that you notice as a principal, and you're like, we need to attend to this first before we're getting into engagement. So there's a conversation that goes back and forth between the teacher and the principal, and you decide, yes, this is what I'm going to focus on, and this is what I want you, principal, to look for when you come in. So they decide on that focus area. So then the principal comes in, they do 1 to 3, they shouldn't just do 1, at least 2 or 3 observations in an inquiry cycle. And they're short. They are just looking for what the teacher and the principal decided is the focus area. So if I'm looking for engagement, that's what I'm looking for. If I said I want to look for what student talk is around, are the students talking about their learning in a way that shows me that they understand the content, and then that's what the goal was of the teacher, that's what you're looking for. That's what you're tuned into. So, and where's the evidence that you have that that's happening? So that's what the principal's taking notes on and recording. Then after the principal's probably dropped in 3 times on 3 different occasions to see that, then they get together with the teacher and they have a conversation about what evidence, what feedback, what they've got to share, and then they decide, do we want to stay with this goal, or do I see growth there, or and we move on to something else. So that's it's a pretty intensive process when you're a level 1, and you're going to go through that twice. You're going to go through that twice in the school year. So that's a level 1. Level 2. A lot more laid back. Level 2, you're doing the growth process, just like I said, that plan, everybody does that. And then at least twice a year, your principal is going to come by and do a walkthrough. And they're going to give the teacher some feedback about what they're seeing. So again, it's probably going to be on student engagement or classroom environment. They are going to do a walkthrough, because you don't want to not go into a teacher's classroom and give them feedback for 2 whole years. So they are going to do that, and they'll give some feedback to the teacher, but it's not the same as level 1, where you're going to have a meeting and all of that. It's just, here's the feedback, and then that's kind of where it's left. And then at the end of the year, the teacher, if you're level 2, they're going to do a self-reflection on their growth, providing evidence of how they grew, and then they're going to have a conference and meet with their principal, and that document will be saved to the teacher's personnel file. So why did we choose this approach? The approach, it really, if you take a look at your strategic plan, it really does align to that strategy number 1 of expanding support for individualized learning and social emotional learning. Those strategies, those elements of the University of Washington's plan really, really speak directly to that. It's a continuous growth model. It is growth for both the teachers and for the principals. I will tell you, when I first started working with this, I was a superintendent when I worked with it. I wish, and for years I thought I was an instructional leader, but until I dug into the depth of really being very clear about what I was looking for and what evidence did I have to support that, I just wish I had done this years ago, because I learned a lot from that. So you learn a lot as a leader. You really do. You build up your skill set so that you can coach those teachers so that they can become better at what they're doing. And it really does, identifying that instructional leadership is the primary role of your principals, and it should be. And if it's not, what can we do to make sure that is? Because all of the research out there will tell you that if the most effective principals are instructional leaders, and they spend the majority of their time doing that. So we want to, what I'm always encouraging districts, do what you need to do to give your leaders the capacity to lead instruction, because that's what's going to change things for your kids, and that's why you're here. And it is a system-wide approach. So I know that you have instructional coaches. So your instructional coaches can also be part of this, and they can work right alongside with the principals. Everybody's going to have the same language. Here's the language that we know of good instruction. And so they work right alongside them. So right now, who's going to participate in the plan? Boy, you are good, Walter. It's like you're reading my mind. You just go right to it. Ideally, the plan's a tool for all teachers. However, we understand right now that there are some teachers, like your school nurse, probably not going to work for, but that's not a model. It doesn't have all the components. You're not going to be looking at student engagement as a school nurse. So there's some work that has to be done. I know Brooke is tuned into that, kind of has identified, here's some special areas that we're going to have to do something different, because it's not going to apply to those teachers. But for most teachers, it will apply, but not for all. And then when will it be implemented? I think Brooke already spoke to this. It will be that the 2020, this year is a pilot year. So I know principals have sought out volunteers that wanted to participate. I know that if there's new people that have been hired, I think a lot of them are part of this plan, because why start them with something old and then switch them over? And then the design committee is going to get together in the spring of 2024, and we'll refine that plan before we roll out. And then hopefully full implementation next school year. So what are we going to do in 23 and 24? What's my work going to be with teachers and with leaders? Teachers, if they haven't yet been, they're going to all be introduced to that model. The leadership, I'm going to meet with them. We meet next month, and we meet in October. And we're going to debrief. How did it go with working with growth plans? What did we learn? Have you started to plan your walkthroughs? How is that going? So again, we're building our expertise as a group to support each other. And then we'll see, do we need to make any tweaks? How are we doing? And in December, we'll meet again to review and discuss how did those level 1 inquiry cycles go, because that's new for the principals, and how did that work? What did we learn from that, or any changes we need to make before the next round? And in the spring, I'm going to put together a survey that we'll give out to all of the teachers who participated and get their feedback. Like, how did it work? Do you feel it really did support your growth as a teacher? And so that will inform us as before we finalize the plan, is do we need to make any tweaks? So that's it. I know I talked a lot and it's a lot to take in, but do you have any questions? Yeah, sure.
At any point during the evaluation process, is student feedback collected on the performance of a teacher or instructor?
We haven't planned for that. I know that is this
In our current model,
in the
it
current
does.
model, you do a survey?
Yes.
Yeah, we do it. And we talked about that, and it's not part of it right now, but we did talk about, do we somehow do some type of feedback with teachers, with students, that then informs the teacher. So we haven't, it's.
Especially with student engagement, it seems like
I know, right.
a main factor
Right.
to consider.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's a good point. And I think, it's just something was on our, kind of had it on our radar, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But I think that certainly as we move through it, we'll be like, that might be really important. Like, how do we know? Because so one of the things we're going to know, like, we're going to observe, we'll have some observation, but how do we really know? And is there some survey we can give to kids that will give us some information about their engagement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this plan. I think it's wonderful. I was a former principal, just to let you know, so I love these kind of things. But I do have a question. One of the things I really struggled with was standardizing the data. So when you're talking to teachers about their growth plan and then how are they going to implement it, what's the evidence going to be? How are we going to somehow standardize that evidence in a way that, this teacher says they have student engagement and this teacher says they have student engagement. I know they'll have conversations about that, but when the rubber hits the road and they're really in the classroom, like, how do we know that it looks the same in those, or, that growth is occurring in a similar pattern?
Yeah, I mean, and that's
standardized.
That's our work this year. That's why that's why I'm going to work.
As a team, we develop look-fors for the classroom, so we're really clear about when we're going into the classroom, what are we looking for? And
Right.
everyone is clear about what we're looking for,
So, and then how do we know? So what I found really helpful when I was learning this model too, is that I always did it with somebody else, with another leader. And it was amazing. Like, I might pick on something totally different, or they might pick up on something I totally missed. And when you're learning, that's really important to have a buddy to have that conversation with. So that's when I talked about, it is really a growth model for leaders too. They're going to learn a lot, because what am I really looking for? How do I really know that that's what that is? If I say student talk is revealing student engagement, what the heck does that mean? How do I know that? What are they, what language were they using? How do I know that?
Thank you.
Yep.
So you indicated, or you had mentioned that new teachers were going to be in this model, or are we only, because I guess my question is, we have a lot of new.
it depends.
Okay.
They're not all necessarily in the model. Each principal had the latitude to work with teachers to decide, a couple of teachers in each building that would be in this model, because we really want to learn from the pilot and refine that moving forward. So.
Yeah. And then the principals feel like when this goes district-wide, not this year, but next year, because we have a lot of new teachers, they feel like they have the support they need to really dig into this with their new staff.
Well, I would ask them, but I also think our current model is, pretty heavy in the first couple of years at teaching as well. So it's a heavy lift no matter what, but I would defer to the principals to answer that question.
Yeah.
I think I can speak for myself. I'm super excited about the pilot. I was part of the committee. And I think it's going to give teachers the feedback they actually need and can use.
Yeah.
And it allows them to bring to us areas that they want to grow in. So, you know, if you're working in an area that's important to you, I think that's super beneficial. And the current model that we have is great in that they're doing some personalized growth plans and things, but that's really hard for a new teacher who's new to the district and everything is brand new to come up with like 3 in-depth goals for the year. So I'll be doing 3 new teachers with the pilot and the rest of my staff is the current one. But I think that's great for all of us as well, because we're going to be meeting and talking about what we're seeing and experiencing with our teachers as well across the country.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that you, as we go through it, I guess, that we provide you the support, you know, that you need in order to, because we do have a very new staff and that it's probably a lot on you, so.
It's been my experience so far, they're not quiet. They don't hide their opinions.
Probably not. Yeah.
They'll be like, this isn't working.
They're not afraid to speak up.
I have a question. It always sounds great, right? But does it work? Is it realistic? So one of the things that I took away is that one of the primary jobs of the principals is to provide this instructional leadership and coaching and feedback to the teachers. So do the principals have the capacity to do that? I mean, Ben, do you have 2 hours tomorrow to spend with teachers, helping them become better teachers? Is that in your capacity to do, or do you have other stuff to do?
I mean, there's other things, but I think that's the heart of the job. That takes priority. I think our role as administrators are similar to what you're saying, like how you're saying, like, how do you support us? Our role is really how do we support our teachers? The biggest impact we have on students is directly through how we impact our teachers. So I think, well, there's days when I would say, boy, it's tough. It's the priority and it's the heart of the work.
Yeah, I think if the principals can find the time and make this a priority, then it's got potential. But if they're going to be pulled in a million different directions like they currently are, and they can't focus on this, then are we really going to gain anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the conversations that we'll have, because I think when I implemented this with my principals, we had to do things like, I had to say, okay, I want you to post a schedule that goes up on your door, and you map out every week, here's my instructional block time, and that's communicated with teachers and with parents. And so you have to start to put things in place that make the time sacred. And it's a transition for people at first. And you do have to do that, and you have to look at, are there some things on my plate that maybe somebody else in my, that works with me can handle? And it's a big challenge, there is no doubt, because we would just be responding to emergencies all day if we didn't intentionally make the time. So those are the things I'll talk about with principals. How do we, if you're struggling with it, how do we intentionally make the time? Like, what's getting in the way?
Yeah, if I can sort of address what you said, Tim. My experience was that in 35 years, I didn't get too many complete evaluations. It was a struggle for principals, and I wish Ben all kinds of luck. Because of water main breaks or whatever it is, there's always something. None of that happened during COVID. And I would be observed, but then there wouldn't be the write-up, or I'd be observed, there'd be the write-up, but there wouldn't be the meeting. They're just, or none of it would happen sometimes, because they were so busy trying to get to the probationary teachers. It's a real challenge, and it's a real concern.
I saw that you have for when you revisit at the end of the year, how it did, just to measure its success. I know that you said there's a survey, but do you have or does Washington University have certain language where you can measure, was the pilot a success? Or how do we know if this is even worth implementing after our pilot year?
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess they do provide us, and you can get a copy of that again from Casey, in those 5 dimensions, like, here's what it looks like.
Okay.
Here's how we know if a teacher's successful with it. And so there's a rubric for it. So that's going to be really valuable to the principals, and to the teachers. If I'm a teacher, I want to know, am I at the beginning, am I in the middle, or am I at the end of that? And what evidence can I have to show that this is where I am? So they do spell that all out so that you have that tool. Yeah.
And this doesn't require any board action. This is just FYI. Doesn't need to be union negotiated. This is
Well, we
endorsed
have
by you folks.
we have a side letter for this year
Okay.
to pilot it, and we'll move into next year, but
Yeah, our members will vote to ratify it, see if we want to go forward with it.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Well, thanks so much for your time and presenting tonight.
Nice to meet all of you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Number 9. John, this one's for you.
yes.
This one's for you. This is the Slate Valley Communication Plan. I guess I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Yes, and actually, then the people bench, the staff culture survey is also attached to this presentation. So I'll run right from one right into the other. So, okay.
Blames everything on my back. All right, so I was asked to kind of talk about the communications plan, which I believe you all actually received in your packet. So what I thought, rather than just kind of go through it word by word, and I'm very much a visual person, so I just kind of looked at what the main objective is. And basically my job is to kind of help present that main objective in a very clear manner, that when people look and see something from Slate Valley, it's our brand, that they know it's from Slate Valley, right? It's very clear, even before they start reading or seeing what the information is. So I went through and I just basically myself highlighted the areas that really that I was responsible for. And I just thought I'd quickly present to you some evidence of what we did last year. So I'm almost a year into this job. So give me a couple, 3 or 4 more weeks, and then I will have the full cycle. So this is what we, did. What I'm showing is what happened for the last school year. So basically the branding, as I said, it's very important that our logo, our colors, our fonts are all consistent. And we do try to express this also to other people within the district, principals and such, when they're making presentations, that we use the same template just so that that look is consistent. Our colors, that the green, the blue, we always like the sans serif. So again, hopefully when you look at this and you see a lot of, and if you see this in a newspaper, without looking too closely, you know this is something from Slate Valley. That's hopefully what I'm doing, because that's the goal. And then I just went through the methods of engagement and again, showed some evidence, and I went right down the line for the board, which is always recording our minutes and recording the agendas and putting out the notifications of what's in the news, which you get every week from Brooke, but I'll pull that together for her. Our meetings are always up on the website, which we'll talk about later in the presentation. And so these are just some of the methods of the engagement to keep the board informed and engaged in what is going on in communications. For our staff, I try to highlight our great staff as much as we can. I like to say in the office all the time that I like to live in the world of rainbows and butterflies. I like to present all the wonderful things that we're doing, because our staff and our students do great things, and sometimes it's overshadowed by others. So for our staff, last year I started the meet Mondays, and I put out a survey to all staff members,
And if they filled out a little questionnaire, then I put together a little, just a very quick write-up on who they are and, where they came from, a little bit of background information. It's all staff too. It's not just the teachers. Custodial crew has done it, a lot of IAs. So hopefully, and this is put up on social media, it's on our website. And then, I just recently did all the little welcomes of all of our new staff. That was also put out on social media. And then I didn't come up with this. This is something I inherited, but I think it's great. For the past few years, they put out a competition amongst all faculty and staff to come up with a logo for a t-shirt design based on our motto of the year. So like last year, it was a different motto. With this year, it's going to be our school, your future. So I'll be putting that out in the next couple of weeks, and we give them about a month to come up with it. And then everybody at the end gets a t-shirt. So that's something that the staff. Methods of engagement for families obviously is social media, newspapers, anything, lots of photos. I try to get around as much as I can, but I love it when teachers and principals and they'll email me or they'll send me some photos or, they'll say, can you come up? I love that. And if I can, I'll take the photos myself. But it's just getting as much, out there, what's happening in our classrooms and even out in the community when they're, on their field trips, they're doing community service. And so I started this Walkabout Wednesday, which is really fun. I'll take the afternoon and I'll go to all the schools. I'll just grab some snapshots and then I'll put it up. And so when people come home from work, they'll see it at night of kind of some things that were happening in the schools on Wednesday. I also do Where Are They Now Wednesdays, which we'll get to. So sometimes Wednesdays have different themes. Evidence for our community without children. This is where we're trying to get, obviously people, keep them engaged in the school system that they support. So we started up the coffees and conversations again. We had one last week. We have one this Wednesday morning at Bird's Eye Diner. So please come. It's just an hour and a half of time that you can have a cup of coffee on us and just talk about whatever your concerns are. And school board members are there and administration's there. Principals can get away. Sometimes they're there. So we had a little turnout for the first one this year, but it was kind of early in the year. So we just did this for the first time last spring, more around budget time, and it was focused around budget. And we just thought it'd be nice to do it before the budget season starts and just kind of get a general feeling of concerns from the community in a nice casual environment. Of course, you probably are, the little connect list, our tours, listening tours when the budget season does happen. And then you are all, school board members are there to have people come in and ask specific questions about the budget and the budget cycle and things like that. Brooke writes articles for the Free Press called Education in the Slate Valley. They give us one article a month. And gosh, she's been doing this for over a year now because it was before I started. And then sometimes Casey's written an article, I write an article, Chris, it's not always Brooke, majority of the time it's Brooke.
And it depends on what questions we get from the public. That's what informs those.
Right. Sorry. And then we just acknowledge our retires, the people who have retired, and then the Throwback Thursdays are always seem to be a hit for those people in the area if they, can make connections, to see their old yearbook pictures or whatever. Those are really easy to do. Just go get a yearbook and they're fun. So those are just some of the things, community. And then showing our students actually out in the community doing things. So that, again, just a few examples. We have a student through the Rotary Youth Exchange who's over in Finland right now. The gentleman in the center, he actually did a great internship while he was a senior here and, was out in the community. He's also a fireman, a firefighter. And then it's hard to see going on the right. It's just when CES, the Castleton Elementary School brought, it was whole school, right, Kim? It was everybody, all grades. They went and picked invasive species, so they were helping out in the community. So again, just some examples, but that I try to get out, again, website, Facebook, sometimes Instagram, just and show what we get to do. And then budget. This was probably the most in one little time that I feel like I put out while trying to do all those other things. There is a page on the website that is all about the budget, and it still has kind of last year's things up there, but very soon I'll be updating it. So if you have any questions, want to know where we're at with the budget process, go directly to under district, and then there's, again, sorry, hard to see, but it says budget, and it'll bring you to a page that gives all of our information. We actually did a Google ad last year. That was Brooke's idea, and it was fantastic because we got a lot of people to kind of like just get our message and what our hope was and what we do for the kids in the school. And so I'm thinking maybe we'll do another one, hopefully. We also advertised in the papers with some little infographics, just some little, information about the budget, maybe some things we had heard that people were concerned about, and just tried to put some information out. Again, the listening tours, and then of course that you get the mailer and with all the basic breakdown of the budget. So we handed out, little reminders to vote. We had, if you are not registered to vote, we had people standing out and giving those as parent pickup, just to try to get people out to support whichever way you believe. Just go and vote. So that's budget. These are personal areas that I like, when I was going through the communication plan, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, got to really work on that. So, I did one district newsletter last year. There'll be more. I'm gonna hope for at least quarterly, maybe 4 of them. Senior spotlights. Again, this was something that was brought to my attention that other schools do, and I think it's a brilliant idea. And it was kind enough that we will be able to run them in the paper. So this is just an example of what it will look like. And again, I'll put a survey out to all the seniors. If they would like to participate, they can. They certainly don't have to. They just fill out a Google form, send me a photo, and then I'll put it in and we'll have a spotlight. Yeah, superintendent's community videos. We've talked about this, and we're going to do it this year, Brooke, because I really think I was just trying to get what I needed to do, like prioritize last year. So those will be coming out. And also the monthly briefs to local media outlets. I'll be honest, I didn't even know there was a form that existed that I can fill out to let them know like what's coming up. So I will be better about that. The other thing I'd like to promote here is the use of the Slate Valley app, because especially when little emergency things come up, like the water main break, those people who had the app up and I could do a push notification, they got the information like that. They didn't have to wait for the robocall to go through, thousands of phone numbers. So I'm going to try to put some more information out, maybe distribute through, the principals sent home with families to see if we can get more people signed up. It's a free app. It works for Android and Apple. And it is really handy. And I saw it, really worked nicely during that last situation. So, and then these are just some of the new things that we did last year that not the year before. Again, the daily posts. I can't guarantee one happens all the time, but I'm trying to do like Meet Monday, so you meet faculty member Monday. Trivia Tuesday is always fun. Just sometimes it's about the budget, but sometimes it's just other facts about great things that we're doing in school. Where Are They Now Wednesdays have been very popular. So if you know of anyone that you would like to be highlighted, an alumni that's gone through our school system and what they're doing now, it's pretty simple. I send out the same questions to everybody. They'll respond, send a picture, and again, I put together a little article. Throwback Thursdays, and then the Focus Fridays, and recently I've done a couple of Flaunt It Fridays, if we have something really kind of nice to brag about. So the Fridays and the Wednesdays can change up a little bit. And then our full-size highlight in the Herald, we're gonna be doing those again. It happened 5 times last year. And it really is just to showcase the great things that are happening in the school. It's not to be an ad per se, it's just really to show, you know, and I break it down for each school and with the QR codes, and I put a little video together so people can actually see the work that the kids are doing. And that's it for the communication plan that I was gonna show, but by all means, if you have any questions on it, you know, before I get into the website, does anybody have, I don't know, anything with the communications plan that you want to ask or see done more or less or anything?
On the senior spotlight?
Yep.
You said that's something you'll send to a senior if they want to do it?
Yep.
What about the staff or somebody picking out a senior themselves and doing a spotlight on them?
Well, I think it's nice to have it in the student's voice. The questions are, you know, like, what is your favorite memory in Fairhaven Union High School? You know, what are your plans? It's really, and I didn't want to put any pressure. I don't want kids to think they have to do it. So, the gentleman that was, you know, his mom was willing to volunteer, and he did it. You know, just because I wanted to kind of see. Get his opinion of the questions, if he thought, you know, if they were just the right, you know, types of questions asked. So that was my thought behind it. And then this way it's up to the student. I want every student to do it. I hope they will. But I don't want it to be that teachers are picking certain ones. It should be everybody, including staff or kids, everybody.
Okay.
Yes.
I think this plan is really fabulous, and just for a lot of reasons. I think for you, it helps you keep you like abreast of what's going on, what's coming up each quarter. I liked as a staff board member seeing what you're planning, and then I think it might help with your evaluation if you get one. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then also too, like in the event that someone takes over this role, there will be a template there that they can use.
Correct.
You know, that they're not starting from scratch. So I think that's really important.
I like everything you're doing. I think you've done an amazing job in 1 year.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. Pat yourself on that.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work.
Wednesdays are hectic in our shared office. Which Wednesday is it?
That's right, I forgot.
Where are they Wednesday?
Right, Friday.
I can't keep up.
Maybe more than just Wednesdays.
Fair enough.
Well,
So I was going to jump into the website now because I know there were some questions about that, and I just figured it might be easier. I was just going to click and actually show you the website, unless you have specific things you want to ask me, or are you okay with me still kind of showing what I've done? So go with that direction.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to jump over to the website now.
Can you make that larger, Walter?
I can give it a shot.
No. Or after.
What's that dinging sound?
Where's your glasses?
New people joining the meeting.
People joining.
Notification.
Where are your
someone
glasses?
joining.
Here, you can look
Glasses?
here, Tim.
Well, it's only half the screen.
Right.
Make it the full screen.
All right. So now, well,
They're shared it on Google.
just move closer.
new tab, Walter. So now I've got to show.
Good.
Right. See,
So
but you didn't
we get home.
jump.
We have website just moved. I'm
You're really neat.
so
You didn't show.
But there's a
tab.
being conversation coming up.
Nice to see that.
Should I stop? And I have to share.
All the games.
You know what's awesome? I used to be tech integration, so I really shouldn't be asking for this help at all. But it's kind of nice to be in this role to like.
There was a reason John was at least when the position over.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I did.
I have a lot of
quiet
questions.
all day.
Alrighty, so here's the homepage, and basically, how our site works. If there's anything district-wide that you are looking for, you want to come to this landing page, okay? It would be really cool, and I'm working, I can't like click on the pretty bear and then go to Benson's. It's just not what something FG can do. But if you do want to go to other schools, you just come up here and you click the different schools. Alrighty, but the main thing I think for district, which I think a lot of people come to the site for, are forms and information. So clicking the menu, and then depending on your screen, like my nice large screen in my office, board is over on the right, but it's down here now. So all of our policies, you know, your agendas, your minutes, anything here, career opportunities. I put this page, this is something new that I put together over the summer with some direct links of some of the positions we were looking for, maybe still are when we were in need of the special educators and such. Let's see. If you do want to go to, and also I have it right here as a button. I don't know if anybody's noticed it, but I did put up sometimes when it was budget season, there's like a prompt as soon as you open up, yes, and you have to, it might be annoying, but we got a lot of people that looked at our budget page by doing that. So I have one just advertising the coffees and conversations right now. So the other thing too that I think people get confused with is the live feed and the news. So when you scroll down, so I didn't click on anything, I'm just at the home page, and then you scroll down, any of the news events that I put up are here. The live feed, it's kind of like, I mean, a lot of times they're the same, but more is going to appear in the live feed. There are a little bit more announcements, you know, maybe other, you know, smaller things coming up. Live feeds could be different on the different pages. So like Benson's live feed is potentially going to be different than Castleton's, right? It tends to be, these are district things, obviously, because we're here on the district page. And there's a lot of overlap too. But let's go to high school. Okay. So again, it's the same layout. You've got your live feed, but they have some different announcements in their live feed, but a lot of the news articles are similar. But here we've got the Fairhaven, the high school newsletters, the middle school, where that wasn't on Benson's, okay? So again, I think when you're going on, if you have children in two different places, you're going to want to check out the two different schools, but also anything district-wide, you can just go right to that district, that first landing page. Let's see. Go back up here. Yeah, I don't really know, like, I think at this point, you know, maybe I need some direction, because maybe I did do something that I don't even, you know, is there anything, because there's been concern about either the website being a little difficult to navigate through or not being able to find things. Does anybody have any questions with that? Yes.
What about including a link to the PEG TV broadcast?
Yep, so those are on, I will open up the board. So again, let's go to your, I'll show you where that is. So we're on the Slate Valley site again, and then under the menu, and I go to Board of Education. This is the main page for everything with the Board of Education. All our links and all the meetings, recordings are here, and they go on. They go back 3 years. Okay, like they don't. I've never taken any down, whatever. And of course, you're all listed. The different committees you're on. Meeting schedule. So that link is under the menu, under board, the first one, Board of Education. Then there are separate links to go directly to agendas or meetings, such like that. I don't have a link for the recordings. I mean, you know, I just have it here on the board page.
Who won the football game this weekend?
Which one?
We did.
You did.
Cowboys.
The second half.
Can you bring it up on the website what the score of the game was, Lisa?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
Why can't we do sports scores on the website?
I guess we could, but my focus was really more, I mean, I have nothing against sports that might have come across that way. But I think that, there's enough media that's covering the sports, like most people know. You know, if that is something that the community wants, then we can make a page, but I would need somebody to help me get that information. You know, like I can't become a sports.
And not to jump in on you, Lisa,
Yeah,
too,
no,
but
please do.
so I think there is also a little bit of work going on, kind of living in the tech realm with Kim Alexander to a degree. The VPA is starting a new sports scheduling site this year that we're kind of hoping might have some potential for some different parts that as they work out some of the kinks there, we might be able to change the way we link a little bit of stuff on the website.
And that would be great,
regarding
because
that,
if they
so.
have it, then we can just put a link on our, which is fantastic, you know, like give you the direct link to that source.
Yeah.
But that is, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of work. I'd be seeing Kim a lot.
I just, sometimes when I want to find the score of a game, I have to go find somebody on Facebook and like look for a
Really?
comment.
All right,
Well,
well,
if I may,
yes.
Lisa, I'd like to commend you because I follow a lot of the local schools because of the business I'm in. And like Mill River, it's all sports. That's it. Otter Valley is mostly sports. Schools will just post sports stuff. So I have to commend you for posting other stuff. I mean, maybe there should be some sports stuff too, but.
And we
but,
do. I mean, if it's a big event, I don't want to say, you know, but
Yeah.
put every single game that's happening in the district.
But I'm glad that we post other stuff. So I just wanted to put that.
Thank you.
So as a parent,
Yes.
one thing that confuses me a little bit is when you click on, so my son's at Castleton.
Yes.
You click on Castleton and you scroll down to the bottom where all the links are. It doesn't really change. You know what I mean? Like there's okay, so there's that, and then I scroll to the bottom. And then I think the only way to find, so in this specific example, I was trying to find how to register him for soccer. And so when you scroll down to the bottom to where the links are, I think, or the menu.
Yeah, you have to go to menu.
You have to go to menu.
All right.
Yeah, so this is what's a little confusing, because you click on the Castleton school, and then you have to click on the menu.
Yeah.
And then you do athletics.
And then you go to athletics, but it's not there. You have to go back to the district to get the athletic information for Castleton schools. So it's just like you have to kind of go back and forth, like I feel like, and I consider myself fairly technologically savvy. My husband may not agree, but
No, this is good feedback.
but just because I have to click on Castleton and then go to menu, like I don't know. It's a little like, it'd be great if there was a way to just have all these links show up for what's specific to Castleton. Does that make sense? Like, cause I don't know. It's a
Well,
little
are the
confusing.
forms the same district-wide, right?
Form
For any
relief is
athletics?
its own thing.
Yeah.
Form relief is its own thing. So it's own, so you just click the form relief.
Right.
But you gotta have it posted for them to click.
Yeah, in this specific instance, I think just the way the menus work from the tech side, just the oversight, that we just need to link the form relief onto that menu. That's just an
It needs to be
oversight.
on all the individual,
Correct.
it's on Slate Valley's, but
Yeah.
also on the individual schools. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
I'm like, where would I find forms?
Okay.
For Castleton specifically, let's just say, since we're looking at that. So there's staff forms, but there's no like parent,
Well, you got your registration here,
yeah.
right? Let's see, student quick links, it wouldn't be, yeah, good catch.
Cause there's like, you know, a thing that pops up where you can find like the forms. So let's say I need like a vacation form, or I need to fill out the medication, you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
there's a bunch of, or is it documents? Is that where I would go?
Oh, wait a minute.
Well, your
Where-
documents, these are probably individual, yeah, so these are specific to Castleton.
And
But
there's,
I'm not, and here's your
There's the
forms
forms.
here.
yeah,
But I see what you're saying, it wouldn't hurt to have the link in two places, because if you overlook the document up at the top,
yeah.
right?
It's probably what most people come to the website for, so it
Absolutely.
shouldn't be 3 clicks away. You know, shouldn't have to.
All right, so that's also good feedback, because what is the website used for? I ask the people all the time, like, what are you using the website for? So it's mainly for forms,
Academic calendar.
an academic calendar.
Finding teacher emails and reporting about it. To know when stuff is happening.
All right.
That's
So you're really not using that to get the news to see what the kids are doing. That's social media.
And we get like our newsletter, weekly newsletter from
Yeah.
Kim that has like a little bit of an update of what's been going on in the schools. And then each teacher classroom will send a newsletter out.
Right. It's, I mean, I know you're in the field, you understand, like doing website, because, you know, you have your parents as an
Right.
audience, you have community members that don't have kids, that it's important for them to be able to find the information, you know, so, I certainly, you know, like I'd love to get, I actually put a survey out word and asked for like that feedback on what are you using that website for. So that's good. At forms, I figured, I mean, I remember being a parent, that is, back then it was, we got paper. So,
Yeah.
you know, but I will work on that. That's good feedback.
Bless you.
Yes?
On the, like if you go to Orwell School events calendar, what's supposed to be on there? Because there's not much on any of them.
Yep. And some schools there's a lot and some there are not. The way the events calendar works, I don't have any, it all just syncs from the individual buildings. So when principals have an event happening in their building and they put an FMX ticket in, then it syncs, the calendar syncs with the event calendar. So I don't have any control over what events show up and what ones.
That's building level.
That's building
Okay, so
level.
that's more or less up to the principal
Yes.
of what he wants on there or doesn't want on there?
Well, I mean, ideally, it would be great for, I think what happens sometimes is the FMX ticket isn't put in because they don't necessarily need to reserve a room or something in a sense, but if you don't put that FMX ticket in, it does not go on, it doesn't go on a calendar anywhere. Even when we look on our schedule, we don't know that something's going on.
Right, so if it's something that's within the school, like, right, so Orwell's having their, open house is coming
Correct.
in the,
That should be on the events
that's
calendar.
not on the events calendar.
It would need to be entered at the school.
It would have to
Right.
be entered as a school-wide event in FMX, so that's done at the building level.
So is that something maybe you could go over with the principals and the
Yes.
secretaries to make sure? Because like Orwell, it really tells you nothing except for that there's Dance with Bobby and you're gonna work on electric cars.
Yeah, and that's.
And I understand why there's on there because they're gonna use our town hall for it.
Sounds
Right.
But there's nothing about what's happening in the school, like what's going on.
It sounds like for the open house,
Oh, yeah, dance and ballroom.
they aren't signing out a room. So the FMX ticket's not being filled out.
But
They-
you
they-
can still call it a community.
You can call it a community event and
But
it'll
do they
publish.
know to do that? They may think that, oh, I do this when I'm signing out a room.
They should.
It is part of our procedure. Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll
So-
work on it.
Yeah,
Well, that's-
we know that's an area that we need to work on.
I mean, even picture day should be on.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed. Right, that's a
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I know everybody of kids gets the email usually about picture day, but at the same time, it's nice, even if you are a parent, and you can go there and see it, so you don't have to
I fully
get a hold
agree.
of somebody like I
I
had.
100% agree. And if you went and looked at the different schools, you'll see that some.
I did, I
schools
was
have
looking at them,
more
and
events
see
than
some were
others,
different than others.
So,
But it'd be nice if they were all similar, not similar, but if you had your, especially a school event,
right.
you know, what's happening in the school.
I think all the
So-
principals are here and they're hearing that, right?
Yes.
Can I say, did you work heavily on the search functions? Because,
The search function is definitely lacking.
Yeah.
well, it
Totally
seemed to
agree.
have improved.
It's
I
improved.
mean, I just went to picture and I've got, Patrick Walters, picture day tomorrow.
This could be better though.
Could be better.
Yeah.
Yes, and it comes I'm
that is
seeing more
something that I talked to our representative about, like
that
we
we
bring
used to
those
have.
concerns to Apogee and like say, you know, that's on their end to kind of help us out, but
Okay.
we need to bring it to their attention that it's not working well.
Okay.
You know, like the
Well,
translate,
Never worked well, but it's working better.
it's working
Yeah.
better.
Well, that's good.
We'll have to give Hunter a shout out then, because maybe he's working out.
More questions.
But
Leave it there.
Yeah, we're not there.
Your presentation.
I had everything to do with that. No. Oh. All set? Any other questions?
Well, I'm just gonna say, you can track data as to where people are landing. And so we're able to see what gets a lot of visits, which is super helpful to try to answer a little bit of the question of what people are looking for, what they're using it for, which I think is helpful, right? As we're trying to figure it
Yeah,
out.
and it is, I agree, it's forms. I mean, that's very, but you don't necessarily know, like, if they're looking and scanning the news, right? They'd have to actually click on an event for that, right? So,
But we do use it.
absolutely, absolutely, we do. So, we good?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Great update.
Postponing that?
Thank you.
People then should go.
There's been a suggestion that the purpose of that item number 10 could be quite lengthy in presentation. This is the results of the culture survey. So are we okay to keep trudging along, or do we want to push that to the next meeting? That would be the question for the board.
I'd rather push it to
Yeah, push it. Next meeting.
Can we get that in our packet?
Yep.
Okay.
Next meeting.
Wow. Here, I thought for sure you.
I spoke, I did, I said next meeting, that's not that loud, Tim.
No, I thought you'd want to hear it tonight.
Oh.
All right, so no objections, we'll push that one to the next meeting.
But I don't want to be here till 9.
So we'll move on then to number 11. I guess Chris Benway was going to give us some more information about the 4,500 rule.
Yep, and I was asked to talk a little bit about the purpose of the state Rule 4,500. I don't intend to do a training on Rule 4,500 with the board. That would be much more lengthy than I think you want to sit here for tonight. But I did send out in the last 2 meeting minutes, there were 2 different links that were sent out with regard to videos. One was about an hour in length, the other one was about 2 hours in length, or 90 minutes and 2 hours in length. So I'm hoping folks at least took a look at some of those, because that does describe a lot of the intricacies around Rule 4,500. The second thing I would like to say is that I'm not going to purport that I know all the answers or have all the answers. One of the things that we're working with are human beings in individual situations. To many situations, the answer is initially it depends, because you don't know the situation until you dig into all the details, look at all the specific details of an incident, look at the history, look at the response, look at the planning that's gone into it. So it's not at a glance that you see an entire situation. The other thing is, in speaking about the purpose of Rule 4,500, the purpose is safety. That's the overall purpose of Rule 4,500, is to ensure, the purpose of the rules are to create and maintain positive and safe learning environments in schools, to promote positive behavioral interventions and supports in schools, and to ensure that students are not subjected to the inappropriate use of restraint or seclusion. That's the purpose of Rule 4,500, is to keep kids safe. And safety has become one of our prominent jobs in education, and we talk about safety on a daily basis, whether it's physical safety, whether it's an emotional safety of our students. It's an essential function of our everyday activities in schools. It's not just about Rule 4,500, it's about what happens before there's ever a need for that. So it's about the fact that, what do we do to promote positive interactions in our schools? All of our schools are identified as PBIS schools, positive behavior intervention and supports, where we define expectations for behavior across environments throughout the school environment, the playground, the hallways, the bathroom, the classroom. We explicitly teach those expectations. So there's a lot of training that goes on with teachers and support staff and with students about the expectations of behavior across all environments in which we are learning in school. There's also, in this district, we have offered now, I think about 16 sessions now of a course called Life Space Crisis Intervention. It's a 45-hour course, and Life Space Crisis Intervention is a comprehensive training program. Participants learn the foundations of intervention, and they gain an understanding of the causes of behavioral problems and of effective interventions. Life Space Crisis Intervention includes de-escalation skills. It really highlights the importance of relationship building. It includes the instruction of intervention skills, which help administrators, counselors, and teachers establish effective helping relationship with kids who might be experiencing some self-defeating patterns of behaviors. LSCI offers participants strategies for avoiding power struggles, for learning effective interventions, and it provides opportunity to see kids with challenging behaviors in a more positive light. It's a nationally recognized program of professional training and certification. Our staff, it's offered to them. They can take it as a 3-credit college course for credits, or they can take it for professional development. We generally end up with between 14 and 20 staff participants in each session. Sometimes are joined from teachers or support staff from other districts as well. And this summer, we were actually able to offer the 5-day, we did it as a 5-day training, 5 days in a row this summer in July. And we actually had a grant where we were able to pay a stipend to have folks participate in that training, which allowed some folks that we might not have typically been able to get because they had to pay for childcare or other things, where if they were only doing it for professional development credit, they wouldn't have had that opportunity. But we were able to offer a stipend and actually increased the participation of people from like outside special ed or special services. So many more general ed teachers, which was what our goal was, were able to participate. So that's one of the things, again, that's a 40 to 45-hour course. In the past, we've offered it in the evenings. It's typically been on Wednesday nights between 3:30 and 7:30, not really an ideal time for a lot of, working staff that may have young families. So it was great to be able to do it this summer as well. So that's one of the ways that we also train and promote outside of just Rule 4500. The other thing that we offer is a program called Safety Care, and Safety Care is one of the approved programs that's identified by the Agency of Education for folks to use in de-escalation, as well as if any physical interventions are required. So we have 3 trainers in our district that are trained as trainers of that Safety Care program. And we offer that training multiple times throughout the year. That training consists of either 6 or 12 hours annually, depending on the cycle that the staff are in. And then throughout the year, we offer opportunities for them to practice those skills, to have little refresher sessions, to have some problems of practice sessions where they can go through some different scenarios. But in all of those things, the largest component of that training is de-escalation. Right? Because it's only a last resort. When all other things have failed, do we ever resort, and only if there is an imminent threat of substantial harm, would any kind of physical intervention or seclusion be used? We talked a little bit about definitions earlier. So I think it's important to note that, we have multiple types of training that we do. With all staff, we do a Rule 4500 training. There's a requirement for all staff in the district, regardless of what your position is, to do Rule 4500 training. In addition to that, all staff go through PBIS training on how to support students and the expectations of behavior and what the school expectations are or rules for behavior. In addition to that, with regard to Safety Care, which does 6 to 12 hours and may include that physical intervention part, not all staff engage in the physical intervention part. Select staff do, and those are the only folks that are allowed to participate if there is a need for an intervention that requires a physical intervention. They have to be trained staff. What we do try to train all the staff in that's a component of Safety Care are the de-escalation techniques, because we want all of our staff to be equipped to be able to prevent situations from ever occurring. So it's a rare circumstance that it has to be used, whether with regard to Rule 4500 and the implementation of that. As I spoke to it earlier, there have been some misunderstandings around the definitions, which has prompted some concerns of folks on social media. I have not had any parent contact me with a concern over, since the end of May when these questions started being brought up on social media, there's not one parent that has reached out to me with concerns. I did reach out to one parent based on a request for information. She felt she was lacking Rule 4500 requirements, but again, I think that was based on maybe a different understanding of what defines seclusion. So if there are folks that have any questions about that, I really wish they would contact me. If they don't want to trust the words I'm saying, there are other folks that are experts in this area that could offer advice, expertise, and representation. The Vermont Parent Information Center, the Vermont Federation for Families, the Vermont Legal Aid Council. There's a variety of folks that have experts in this area that are, and their job is to provide peer support and to help with the navigation for families if they have any questions. So I would really encourage folks to reach out to those folks. The AOE is very helpful if you have questions as well. But again, I would always encourage folks to start with your building level folks, your administrators, your central office administrators. We are here to work for the public. We do work for you. And so we do want to be responsive to your questions and your concerns. I can't be responsive to your questions or your concerns if nobody has come to me. And again, nobody has come to me.
Can you forward to me what you got from the AOE? Was that an email?
Absolutely. I'd be glad to give you a copy.
Please do.
Yep,
And
I will do that.
when did that Rule 4500 training for all staff start?
2011, 2012 school year, I think. I'd have to go back and look at the rules and when it first passed, but I believe that the rule first
But we've been
passed
doing
in
it online for
2011.
several years.
We do
now.
it in person
Yep.
and we do it online. There's a variety of different ones. There's different training materials. There's materials I developed. There's materials that the AOE has developed. There's a variety of ways in which that is done. Sometimes that is done within individual teams. It really depends on the unique situation. But all of our staff do complete a general Rule 4500 training. It's a requirement. They sign off. There's a certificate that's published at the end. They have quiz questions that they have to answer as they go through it. So we do provide that. I brought, and if anybody is interested in seeing it, the safety care, I just photocopied a brief description of what it is and a copy of the table of contents. And that goes through, a big focus again is incident prevention, incident minimization, physical safety, what you do after an incident in terms of debriefing and notification, and the very last things are physical management. So again, it's the last resort when all else has failed and there's documentation of such. Folks have questioned the documentation, and again, I don't want to go through ad nauseum, but I have copies of the documentation packet here. We have this memorialized onto our own forms, but the state does have forms that they've made available electronically in hard copy. So this is a hard copy printout of each one of those forms. It does also include, again, definitions, if anybody is interested in that, as well as the reporting process and when we as schools, staff are required to report to the administrator, which is as soon as possible on the same day the event that occurs, when what requirements there are for the buildings reporting to the central office, and what requirements get reported to the superintendent, as well as what requirements get reported to the State Department of Education. So those are all outlined in this, which I'll hand out at the end and folks can have an opportunity to look at. And again, once you've looked at those materials or you've read those, looked at those videos that are online, read the materials, I am more than happy to answer any questions that anybody may have about this or to seek the answers on our behalf as a district. As I said, the AOE has a training coming up at the end of this month in September. I have reached out to the folks in charge of Rule 4500 several weeks ago, and we are trying to solidify a date for them to come down. If this community is interested in having a forum, I've offered to host that. So we are just trying to solidify a date. We thought we had done, and then we found out there was a potluck happening here. So we went back to the drawing board this morning, looking at some other dates. So
October.
It will be in October, yes. They didn't have any dates available for September, so it will be in October. This is not something we take lightly. I can tell you that anytime, restraint or seclusion has to be used, that is a process that has been thought about. That is a process that, folks have taken great care and concern in establishing protocols that are going to keep everyone safe, our students safe, our peers safe, our faculty and our staff safe. That's our charge, is to keep everybody safe. I'm also very proud of the fact that we've been able to integrate into our programming and into our schools some kids with really complex situations and really complex needs. And sometimes those things are tough. And we want to keep our kids in our district. We want to keep them in our home schools to the extent that we can. And so we do offer some alternative programs throughout the district. And sometimes when you have kids that are identified in alternative programs, there is a greater probability, because of the nature of their experiences and some of the behaviors that they're demonstrating, that there's more likely a need for a variety of types of interventions. I want folks to know that when folks are experiencing that, there are processes they go through in terms of developing behavior intervention plans. There are functional behavioral assessments that are done with students, which is a complex process of observation and trying to hypothesize what is the unmet need behind that, and to be able to meet that child's needs so they don't have to engage in a behavior as a form of communication. There are sometimes significant what are called behavioral or safety plans that go into place when a student when a team has had to utilize either restraint or seclusion on more than one occasion. Then we sit down and we have a meeting about what are the circumstances under which this may occur, and what is the best planning that we can do to eliminate this from being a possibility in the future. And then if we can't eliminate the possibility, and there is an imminent and substantial threat of injury or harm to that child or themselves, what is our plan? Who do we need to train on that with regard to the response, and how are we going to evaluate the effectiveness of that? So it's a very, very comprehensive process. It is not something that is taken lightly. So again, if anybody has questions about that process, I would welcome the conversation. If any parents or families have any questions or concerns, I would welcome that conversation. You can reach me by email, you can reach me by phone. My office is located here in the central office at the high school. Folks usually know where I am. So please reach out. This is something that we take very, very seriously. We work for the children. I know I have not dedicated 32 years of my professional life, 26 of it serving this community and the students and families of this community. We come to work every day to serve this community. And I hope that folks understand that we have their children's best interests at heart.
So whether you call it a timeout or in-school suspension or whatever you call it, there's a loss of instruction time. How's that made up?
It's different in every single situation, Mr. Heyer, for each student, and it would depend on the unique situation within that specific circumstance. No two situations are ever the same.
Are these situations rare? Do they happen frequently, or?
They are rare. That's actually one of the things. The incidents of use are very seldom. The incidents are usually few and far between, or you might have a particular student or a particular situation or something that's going on that may make it more likely. And then we're always meeting as a team, regrouping, changing a plan, collecting data, evaluating the effectiveness of a plan, bringing in other resources, changing the environment, doing what we can with what we know with the data and the information that we have available to us.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. I was just going to say, thank you for a very thorough presentation. I want to throw out there that the one thing that's, I think, the most important part of the whole thing, and I just want to throw this into your presentation, is that we need to maintain the dignity of every child in this district and everywhere else. Maintaining children's dignity sometimes has to happen, not in the public sight of all of their classmates and obviously everybody else in the school. So people, and I think Chris spoke correctly when she said that it's an individual situation for everything that happens behaviorally for children in the Slate Valley district and every other school district. And I'm sorry, but I just have to throw that out. We have to maintain kids' dignity.
Every board member, I believe, got a copy of a letter from a former special ed teacher, not the one that we let go, but one who's, I believe she's in Indiana now. And she mentioned a lot of abuses that she personally witnessed. And the response she got was, "Do you live here?"
If there
I
were,
think we could have done better than that.
Chris, a question for you. You're always very well prepared. You certainly seem like a pro. You've been doing this for how many years, you said?
26 years in this position.
All right, so you've given me the impression that the buck stops with you, right? And,
Me to Brooke.
well, when it comes to 4,500, maybe it goes to you first. So I guess you've described the procedures, the protocol, the statutes. You've talked about the training that all staff members receive. So if a situation were to occur where a staff member didn't follow the book by the T, and maybe did something incorrectly, how would that information make it to your desk? How would you find out about that?
So in a number of ways. One, I would hope that in working as part of a team, number one, none of these folks are working in isolation. They're not working alone. So there are team members working with them. There are some people that might be involved in an intervention, other people whose charge is to record, to time, etc. So they're observing the incident. So the first is if anybody did anything that wasn't by the book, I would hope that they would acknowledge it to one another. Hey, I have a concern. I saw this. I heard this. That's number one. The second is that they would go to their administrator and they would report that to their building supervisor, whether it's their direct supervisor, is typically the building administrator, that they would go to that person and report it. And then that report would come to me. There's also the documentation here where it's recorded. They're recording what they did, when they did it, what time, what happened before, what happened after, who was involved, who saw, what was going on in the environment, all those kinds of things. When the staff fill that out and they submit it to the central office, I review every single one of them. And then I make the determination as to whether or not, based on that staff report to the administration, it's already been looked at by the building staff. It comes to me. I look at that and review that information. If I have any questions, I may communicate back with the members of that team or with the building administrator. If it meets certain criteria, then I send this document for Brooke to review. If when I do my initial review, I also acknowledge that based on the incidents here, it would need to go farther than Brooke, I also indicate that on here, and then she reviews it, and we typically would make that report together. Last year, the AOE actually created an online reporting form. Prior to that, we would do it through a written letter.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Chris Benway?
So with each individual being individuals and very complex in some scenarios, how on earth do you maintain staff who are putting themselves in these situations?
It's becoming increasingly difficult.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I mean, do parents have this expectation that they're just going to drop their child off and you deal with them, or?
Every parent's expectations are different. The situation around every student is different. And parents may have the same response, but it may be for very different reasons. And you don't know, just like with students exhibiting a certain behavior, you don't know what their morning looked like beforehand, right? So, simply an exhibition of a behavior doesn't tell the story behind it. That's true with students or adults. So parents are involved in this process. And if there is a student who is exhibiting behaviors that are unsafe, or if they engage in, these are not always, and most of the times where restraint is involved, or it is not because the student is trying to harm somebody else. Our students that are requiring that, it's because they're engaging in self-injurious behavior. And when they're stopped from trying to engage in self-injurious behavior, then they lash out at the person who's trying to stop them from doing that. So I think that's important to recognize too, is that not all students that are acting out are trying to harm someone else. Oftentimes, they're directing that harm inward.
Mm-hmm. So how do you pair staff with individuals that have higher needs?
So we try to look for the best match. We look at personalities. We look at qualifications, and we also look at the training piece. There are specific staff that are not eligible for the positions because they have not participated in training. There are certain staff that are not eligible for the positions because maybe they have some accommodation or where, maybe they don't have the physical prowess to be able to engage in certain activities. So they might not be a candidate for that position, but all staff receive additional training for being in those positions. And the staff that are trained and that are needing to use those interventions also receive a higher stipend in terms of their financial compensation on their wages.
And then at what point does a student have to be removed from school? Like when they are, like when the staff are feeling uncomfortable with that student, that they can't control that person?
There's actually protocols that get articulated that the families are a part of when we develop the plans as to what are the conditions for a student to, go to another environment? What are the conditions for a student to be sent home? What are the conditions for other types of interventions? And they're outlined in a plan that's developed as a team of which the parents are a part of.
Okay.
There's also, I think it's important to note that as part of Rule 4500, there is a dispute resolution process that's articulated in the rules under Rule 4500. And there's also, not always, many times, if a student might be on another type of plan as well. So for example, if a student were on an IEP, and there were also a safety plan or a behavior plan, there's also a dispute resolution process through the IEP that would also cover anything around the behavior intervention plan or the safety plan. So there are avenues and resources to be able to help support families and students and teams that are dealing with these complex situations.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Rebecca.
Since you've been doing this for so long, obviously the first couple of years doing 4,500, it was kind of like a learning curve. Have you noticed, as more and more of the staff are taking these courses, have you noticed growth within the district in being able to deal with these problems and that they're working much better together and working much better at stopping behaviors before they start?
I think we're all continually learning. And I think that, we had certain parameters in place before COVID. COVID changed a lot of operations, changed a lot of, how we operate and, the different protocols. And I often half jokingly say, there were advantages to everybody being 6 feet apart. 6 feet apart, in that it was much easier for everybody to keep their hands and feet to themselves, right? Those kinds of things. So, but there were substantial changes. There were some changes in the rules of Rule 4500 during COVID because of seclusion or physical restraint and not being in close contact with students because of the fear of transmission of disease and things like that. So kids are kids. Kids are always changing. The circumstances under which kids, are living or the situations that they're dealing with are constantly changing. So I would not make any, gross generalizations. I think each circumstance is different. And, for kids, their own situations may ebb and flow. So I think we are seeing more students that are dysregulated. And I would say that's probably exasperated since COVID. Sort of shorter fuses is how I would describe it. And I think that folks have seen that in the larger community. That's not just present with young people in schools. I think many people have experienced that.
That trickles down.
Yeah.
The training that I received was a lot of slides, and it seemed like
Thankfully, it has changed.
Well, every year, it seemed like there were more and more of these trainings that were mandated, in all fairness.
Yeah.
And like bloodborne pathogens, I can't even remember all the trainings that we had to do. So we'd just click through those slides and click through. And I heard people complaining, it's making me go through all the slides. I know I can pass the quiz now. And it was a pretty low threshold to pass, pretty low passing grade. But there wasn't a whole lot of thought, and I'm sort of indicting myself here, but there wasn't a tremendous lot of thought that was put into these trainings.
Well, that's unfortunate for
Well,
sure.
and we,
But
you know,
one
we
of the
printed
things
off
that
the
we've done.
certificates and.
And I think
we're
that Bonnie
not-
Lenihan this past year started, last year actually started a pilot program of orientation and mentoring with the instructional assistants. And we've had a core group of 5, 6 instructional assistants that work with Bonnie for a couple of days this summer, really looking at the training and the orientation of support folks. So really trying to embed more accountability for everybody in that, as you're describing, Kurt, to make that a more engaging process in terms of the training, but also making sure that you're getting the outcomes that you're looking for, that folks aren't just clicking through slides, but they're internalizing that information. So when we go back and ask them about training, they do recall what they've done and they're practicing those skills that they've learned in the training in and out of every day. That's the hope and the goal. And that's why we've been trying to meet with them as smaller groups and school teams to do like little mini refresher trainings. Last year, we used a couple of our trainers. We used our homes to school liaison and they hosted them at different intervals after school where folks could attend. We did that sometimes during early release days as well, so folks could practice and review, because it is important that you stay abreast of this. It is not something that is done frequently, as you said, and therefore, if you're not using a skill all the time, you forget it, right? You forget the details. You forget it's not, muscle memory goes away, right? So we want to be rehearsing, we want to be practicing so that when it becomes instinctive, we've got that muscle memory to do things the correct way. So that's why we're not just relying on the video, going around and doing in-person trainings with those teams and around those, with those teams of students that are working with those.
Well, I think de-escalation training is important. Anything, because the best practices now seem to be saying, let's not do so much in-school suspension, let's not do so much timeout, let's not do so much, because there is the loss of instruction time. So anything that can prevent that, I think would be very valuable.
Absolutely, and that's what all those other preventative trainings that I talked about, and like as you go through the process, as teams document all the interventions that they've attempted prior to that. My hope when I look at those is that there's an exhaustive list of interventions that have to happen.
All right, thank you. Thank you,
You're
Chris.
welcome.
Thank you for the questions,
Contact me
everyone.
if there are any questions. Thank you.
All right, so item number 12, we're bringing this to a close quickly here. Item number 12 is the discussion about the board meeting October 30th. Refresh my memory, Brooke, what do you want to do?
Either move it to the 23rd. I cannot be here on the 30th because I'm actually presenting on community engagement in Boston that night.
All right, so we're hoping to eliminate the Monday, October 30th board meeting and in its place, bump it up to the 23rd. But then you have a situation where you have 2 meetings back to back. Is that even necessary?
I'm not sure that I mean, the biggest piece during that time of year is going to be budget, and the meeting before will be dedicated to finance, the finance committee meeting and budget. I would say that we may need to find a time to have the policy and building and grounds meetings though. So that would be, Chris is saying he probably doesn't need building and grounds. So yeah.
Those are
I'm-
also scheduled for Monday, the 30th?
Yes.
Can I just ask though, because isn't it supposed to be the 2nd and the 4th?
Indigenous Peoples' Day.
We have the 9th, yes, off.
Indigenous Peoples' Day.
October is one of
bumps
those
it.
months that's off cycle.
So we don't have it on the 9th.
No,
No.
you have it the 16th. Is the board meeting.
So what's the board's pleasure? I would think that we only need 1 meeting in October.
I agree.
I agree.
The next one would be what, November?
13th, November 13th.
So the motion would be to just simply cancel the Monday, the October 30th meeting.
Yes.
Motion, we cancel October 30th meeting.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on that one?
So to Brooke's point, would the policy meeting then happen just at a different day that week?
So
You don't need to be present for those, do you?
no, not necessarily. What we can do is we have policy and building and grounds at prior to the next board meeting on September 25th. I guess those committees could probably decide than if they
Yeah.
needed an October meeting or if they were okay waiting till November. So
I thought we were having a policy meeting on the,
we are,
oh, okay.
yeah,
This is October.
yeah.
Sorry. She's
All
saying
right, so there's a motion, a second. Are there other questions about canceling the 10:30 meeting?
to have one on 30th.
Hearing nothing further. All those in favor of canceling, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, this is the second opportunity for public comment. Did you have a comment? Yes.
I have a comment, and I had two questions.
Okay, I will say first off that we're not required to offer you an answer to your question. We'll do our best. So if you keep them short and to the point, we can probably help you out.
The comment is, as Brooke knows, one of my biggest complaints for the last 4 years has been how hard it is to navigate the website. I actually have to say, I have found it easier lately.
Yay.
As the gentleman said, the search is better.
Okay.
Not great.
All right.
It really still needs improvement, but it's better than it was.
Okay, we'll take that and keep working.
So I wanted to just point that out. So kudos to you guys.
It's going that way.
The gentleman,
Gwen, or Glenn?
Yes.
when you were discussing back, I guess it was the central office report, and you were talking about the equalized student,
Yes.
and you said that they're going to come in for 20 days in a row.
So that in the past, what happens is we take attendance, every student who comes through the door on October 1st, and that's the number that gets reported to the Agency of Education for our student number.
Okay.
And then they apply, it's a long formula to get to the equalized pupil number.
Right.
But because equalized pupil is not the same as the number of students coming through the door.
I'm with that.
What they're doing now with this new weighting formula that has been come down from Montpelier is they are we count our number of students starting from October 1st until October 20th each day. You divide that by the number of days, and that gives you the average number of students that come through our doors every day. And that's the number that they use to calculate our equalized pupil numbers.
Does that include Stafford students?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted
Yes.
to
If
clarify
you want a
that.
copy of the central office report, it
Yeah.
talks about it right here. You can
It
have it.
includes Stafford students.
I
It
just
does.
want to know if that includes.
Yep.
It does not include our early college students because they are, in theory, they're disenrolled from Fairhaven. They go to Castleton or some other school for their senior year. And then they kind of get re-enrolled at the end so that they can graduate. But their numbers, even though they're our students, we don't get credit for them as being our students.
So we
by the
lose
state.
funding.
My last question was for Ms.
Benway?
Benway. So my understanding of the whole situation is that you've got kids that are, have individual programs that they are being followed because of their personal situations. And we're trying to help them get better in dealing with those situations. How often do you actually, and for lack of a better term, graduate these kids out of their programs so they can function in the mainstream, I guess is, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not asking it correctly, but I think you understand what I'm trying to get at.
How successful are we at integrating students back into a general ed environment?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, or when students are that's the goal for most students, is to be in a general ed environment. So it depends on the student. in terms of progress. Some students, and it may depend on, situations outside of our controls, situations outside of school that may also impact behavior. But we've had a pretty good track record with the programs that we've been operating at the elementary level to be able to integrate kids back into their classroom. And in some cases, these are kids that have identified, special education needs and have been able to address some of their needs, identify what that unmet need is that they were needing to communicate through their behaviors, and to help them be successful in a variety of environments, whether it's community, whether it's the general ed classroom, or whether it's a smaller classroom with fewer peers, less stimulation maybe than a general ed classroom. But
Do you find that if they are not being put back into the general population while they're in the elementary schools, that once they get to the high school, the success rate lessens?
early intervention is always what's preferred and what's optimal. If we can identify early and intervene early and intensively, then we can hopefully head off bigger problems down the road with bigger children, so to speak, right? That's the goal. Sometimes we're able to be successful and sometimes we're not. So sometimes we've been able to transition students back into either more time in the general ed environment or fully integrated in the general ed environment, sometimes with supports, sometimes without support. Sometimes they've been able to, take themselves right off an IEP because they no longer need that level of support. Sometimes we haven't been.
Correct?
Well, hold off. Well, sometimes we haven't been successful, and then we may have to transition that student maybe to a more restrictive environment or an out-of-district placement outside of the school district if their needs can't be met within the continuum of supports and services that we have available here. Then we would look at that. So the transition isn't always back into the gen ed classroom if the needs are indicating something else.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Are there any other public comments here in person? Roy?
Roy Newton, I appreciate you putting on the agenda the public comment sections. But I would appreciate it if you would check with your parliamentarian or your Robert's Rules of Order. There is a reason for public comment at the beginning for issues that are not on the agenda. Then, after you get through that and you start your agenda items. All the meetings I've been to over the years. So take, for instance, any issue that you're voting on the agenda, and you ask all the board members answer their questions. And after that is done, supposedly you should give the public the opportunity to speak on that one issue, because the public might have something of interest to say on that particular issue that members of the board did not know about. And then once you get done that public session, you go ahead and vote. And then you go on your next item, and then you do the same thing. So I would appreciate if you check on to see if I'm correct on that, or if you want to continue to do it the way you are.
All right, thank you, Roy. Are there other public comments here in person?
So I actually have one as a public.
Okay.
Okay. So we've talked about, or I've heard about, a culture of fear here at our school district. And I feel like that has transcended into the public now. I have heard from members of the public that they are afraid to come to school board meetings and talk because they fear that arguing with or saying that they don't agree with people on the school board could bleed into social media, and they don't want to do that. So I'm not afraid to speak. I am and will never post on social media because I do not feel that is the place, and I said that last meeting as well. But I'm really starting to become more and more upset
about the things that are being said about our school district, our administration, our staff, and our teachers. All the information that I've seen has either been outright lies or manipulated information stated as fact. I'm patient. I can wait for the truth to come out. I'm not in a hurry. But I'm not holding my breath because a lot of the things we're talking about is protected information, protected for privacy and protected from the public. And it should be. And I agree with that. So I'm not holding my breath. But there's some recent statements that are blatantly false. And they're being stated like fact because they're on social media. So people take them as fact. And there's a couple I'd like to bring to our attention. First one is forcing proficiency-based grading on Slate Valley. Not true. This is a multiple years-long process that involved all stakeholders based on a state requirement. Vermont educational quality standards require schools' graduation requirements be rooted in the demonstrations of student proficiency, as opposed to time spent in classrooms. Requirement will take effect in Vermont, beginning with the graduating class of 2020. This was not an invention or a push by a person. Look around our country, our county, and you'll see similar things in all our schools in the state of Vermont and outside of the state of Vermont. We're not the only ones. Middle school model forced on Slate Valley, which goes against most research. False. Again, the decision was made with all stakeholders involved. Teachers, administrators, school board knew about it. I invite you to visit the UVM Tarrant Institute to review research as well as Google search for the research behind a middle school model. It's out there. It's not an invention we all decided to do. $60 million version of a middle school model. False. We as a board, after a very detailed and long process, voted to proceed with a $60 million bond to improve our 7 through 12 space, as well as upgrade our ancient HVAC system, which continue to be problems to this day. False. Nobody pushed anything on anybody. We did it as a group, as a board, okay? Ruined careers of talented and beloved teachers. We only know the teacher side. Again, privacy issues. I reserve judgment until the time when facts are going to be released. Won't hold my breath. Bore fault witness to the Agency of Education. Opinion. Remember where that one came from? Failed to deal effectively with cases of abuse against a child by a teacher. Opinion. Just because you hear one side of a story does not make it true. And just because you put it on social media doesn't make it true. Again, I am patient. Promoted a culture of fear. Yeah, there's fear right now, guys. And it's not just in our school district, if that's where you think it is. There's fear outside of it too. And so again, just the culture of fear, opinion, reprimanding personnel, recognizing mistakes, taking action to correct and does not promote a culture of fear. As in any organization, there are people that do not agree with the higher ups, and those that do, just look down the road at VTSU, where I work, and what we have gone through. Talk about not agreeing sometimes. That doesn't promote fear. It's part of growing and changing as part of an organization. Presided over test scores in the district that are significantly below state averages. We've struggled for years with standardized testing, and I do not have time to go over all the changes that have happened in the past 10 years. Paper, computer, new computer, different, I don't even have time, okay? Not the end all be all of what's happening inside a school. Greatly expanded Slate Valley bureaucracy. False. All personnel decisions were and will continue to be approved by this board during finance committee meetings and brought to the finance. Please attend if you're concerned about our bureaucracy and how many people how we employ for jobs. Come to our meetings and talk to us. Ask us, why do you have that person? What do they do? Why are they a part of our culture? And why are they a part of our school? Ask, ask, ask. Extraordinary measures to avoid transparency and accountability. Thousands in legal fields. Thank you, Brooke. Protecting our district, protecting our privacy, protecting our students and our teachers and our staff's privacy. I appreciate it. Failed to train administration team properly in acceptable restraints. I'm not even going to talk about it. Even with those incorrect messages that are being promoted about our school district right now, we have amazing graduates from Fairhaven Union High School and amazing communities and amazing students. I grew up in this community. I've been here since 1973. I left and came back for a reason, okay? So please stop listening to half-truths and manipulated lies and start asking the right questions and following the right places and looking for people that can help and support. That's what we want to do. But all this stuff is creating a culture of fear, and a fear in the wrong place, in my opinion, right now. And that's, I'm not looking for discussion. I just felt like a statement.
I don't get to discuss, I'll just put it on social media.
Public comment.
I'll put it on social media. Otherwise, I'll discuss.
Public comment, that's all I'm gonna do.
All right, we're going to move off of public comment and give the virtual audience a chance. Again, if there's anyone participating virtually who has a final public comment, please speak up and identify yourself. Okay, moving on, agenda building. The next meeting is 25th September. What are we looking forward to there, Brooke?
Well, we'll do the culture survey. I'll send out that information ahead of time for folks. I believe we have a student presentation in Benson, and then we'll have some policies definitely to discuss.
Amy Benson, right?
Yes.
I want treats, snacks, baked goods. Okay?
All right.
All right.
If not, maybe
Tim,
ask
when would
one
you-
that at one point, can we have a thing with the guidance counselors and what they're doing with their kids and stuff?
Can you speak up?
I said, if not this coming meeting, since we have that one long thing, but at a meeting, can we have a presentation with our guidance counselors and what they're doing for our kids, helping our kids and where they're going?
Yeah, and actually, we just collected a survey on that, so we're happy to talk about that. So I'll get with Ben, if not the next meeting, then we can do it at the meeting in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
When would be a good time to put on the agenda, new committees? Amending the bylaws to create new committees.
You're speaking about the curriculum committee that you voiced support of?
Curriculum and/or personnel.
You have a personnel committee?
We used to, and then we
Used to.
amended the bylaws not to have it, because folks felt like it bled into finance.
I'll tell you what, I'll take it under consideration. Okay? Any other suggestions?
I hate to be the broken record, but can we talk about West Haven's
Yeah.
participation right now?
Yeah.
Address the person that raised their.
So board seats.
They missed public
Yeah,
comment.
just whatever that conversation needs to be.
Or
You
raise your
can
hand if they can
publicize
see
it
it.
any way you want, but
Hand trackers.
every time I look at the minutes, it's
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
roll and there's.
but they've chosen to not be represented.
I understand that,
Unfortunately,
but-
yeah.
But when you also have a town that size, it's very small,
Yeah.
doesn't have a school, there's so many other complications that go into it that I feel like we should, come up with a decision, so it doesn't say West Haven 3 times that, it's out.
All right, looking for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.